Hello, everyone. My name is Ray Kuhl. I'm CEO of PDSI Technology Solutions, and I'd like to thank you for joining today's webinar, File Encryption, Cloud Security, and Staying Safe on Public Wi-Fi. Those are our topics today. This is the fourth of 4 cybersecurity education series webinars for clients and friends of Foster and Motley. And each of you should be thankful, as I am, to our friends at Foster Motley who envisioned the need for this information. And it's all about how do we help clients protect the important information that we know clients store. So the entire goal is to educate, provide knowledge about electronic security, and help provide some practical information about how can we be better, what do we need to learn. So the first 3 sessions of this series, which soon will all be stored on Foster and Motley's website for future access. We talked about the overview of securing personal information. We dove in a bit more detail to email security practices. Last time we talked about password management. And today we're going to talk about how to protect our files, how to encrypt a file, how to keep it safe, how to keep them safe, how to behave safely on the cloud and on public Wi-Fi. So our agenda: when and why is file encryption important? How to protect personal files at rest, meaning when they're sitting on our hard drives not being used at rest. What needs protection, how to protect it. And then same question when files are transferred, when we're sending files back and forth, whether by email or file transfer to and from the cloud. What are the issues to understand about keeping our data safe, using the cloud securely in general, and using public Wi-Fi security in general. So those are our topics. For those of you not familiar with PDSI, I'm the CEO of this organization. We are a technology services provider serving hundreds of clients in Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana, and remotely beyond, including Foster and Motley, who's been a long-time professional client of PDSI's. Lots of experienced staff, which I'm very thankful to be able to say as CEO, because I know that knowledge helps clients. So our specialty is IT security and IT services. And it's from the learning we constantly do that we speak. Those of you who've attended other sessions have seen this slide, so I'm not going to spend a long time here. It's clear that the world out there on the internet is a very dangerous place. It's increasingly so. And hopefully you understand nothing I've attempted to do, including today, is fear-mongering. But those who think, oh, we're safe, nobody cares about me, the bad guys are not looking for you. They're not looking for me. They're looking electronically for what they can find. And so we need to protect electronically the assets we have to make sure that if, in fact, they do poke a hole in our security electronically, that we can understand the damage they can do in advance and then prevent the damage. So among the very most difficult issues are emails have become, and passwords have become exposed. So this is a big problem that causes security on our devices, because if we have stored our passwords on Target or Anthem or DocuSign, MySpace, just hundreds of organizations who have been hacked, then through no fault of our own, our passwords have likely been exposed. And so that goes to some of the details we talked about last time, keeping our passwords safe. But the fact is, knowing that it's likely that passwords have been exposed for each of us out there, then we need to put the security in place and understand how to build the rest of our security infrastructure. And infrastructure, yes, includes my home, my PC, my Mac. And so that's what we'll talk about today in terms of the things that we have stored on our devices. First, we're going to talk about file encryption. This is a concept that's really pretty straightforward. What is file encryption? File encryption simply means that we store a file in garbled form. And a garbled encrypted file cannot be read by anyone else unless they have the key. And that's what encryption does. It garbles the file that's stored, or it garbles the transmission that occurs, and only the person with the key can unlock it. And the key for a file is the password. When we save it with a password, any password protected file is encrypted. There are various encryption methodologies, and some are more and some are less secure, but the basic principle behind all of them is they're unlocked by a key, and the length of the key is the most important element in keeping that key safe, because folks who can run electronic password crackers, every single character we add to a password exponentially increases the amount of time it takes to unlock that password. So long, non-dictionary passwords are encouraged in general, but this is really, it's important to understand that the length and complexity of a password is really relevant to the importance of the information I'm protecting. If I'm storing a file that has just my social security number in it, it's stored on my hard drive, and the likelihood of me being hacked, so somebody getting access to it, is pretty low, then do I need to put a 15-character password on that? That's a real hassle to me when I need to open it? Probably not. But if I'm storing a list of all of my passwords, that the key to all of my kingdoms are unlocked underneath there, yes, that's when I'd use a longer, more complex password. So the question is, what file should be encrypted? This is a personal decision, and I'm saying for me personally, I store tax returns, I store bank statements, and if the information is, I'm not that concerned. In some cases, I won't encrypt those files, or I'll encrypt them with a 4-character password that's easy for me. I'm talking about the files that I store on my own personal home devices. So we make decisions about how important the information is, and the more important the information is, the longer we need to make the password, and the more we need to really focus on encrypting it. Where encryption becomes increasingly important is when we transmit files. So we'll talk about that too, but right now we're talking about files stored at rest, files that include PHI, personal identifiable information, or PHI, protected health information. That would include driver's license numbers, credit card numbers, CCV numbers, social security numbers, diagnosis codes, CPT codes, things that if a hacker electronically finds that information, they can try and take advantage of it, they can try and sell it, they can try and ransom the information. So what we're going to talk about is you make the decision about what you choose to encrypt. And what I'm going to do is talk about how to do it. And who are we protecting information from? Future hackers, primarily. We put multi-layer security in place. We make sure there's antivirus on all of our PCs and our Macs. And again, I'll say that for iPhones and iPads, not so important that we have antivirus, because those are pretty secure devices. If all you have in your home is an iPhone and or an iPad, I want to say there's not a lot you can do other than the basics of managing your passwords safely. You don't have to protect your devices particularly, but if you have a Mac or a PC or a laptop, same thing, we are protecting that data against somebody who might get underneath our security. And once they have access to our device, the question is, what can they learn? And are we also protecting documents from whoever supports our IT or our children who might sit at our laptops? Sure we are, and it's just a matter of common sense. You decide what needs to be protected. What I'm going to do is talk about how we do it. Any Office document, that's Word, Excel, sometimes PowerPoint, any Office document can be protected. Any PDF document can be protected. There's a handout associated with this webinar, and it will give you the step 1, 2, 3, 4, how to encrypt or unencrypt any of these documents. And I'm going to do a short demonstration of exactly how that works. So I'm going to go now to, this is the handout I mentioned. The handout covers how to encrypt a Word or Excel file, how to encrypt a PDF file, and I'm going to go to an example where I've stored a document called test file. It's a Word document, it's not encrypted. I know that it's not encrypted because when I opened it, it didn't require a password. But now if I want to store this with the password, here are the instructions that are included in the handout. I'm going to follow the instructions, so you don't have to watch everything I do and write this down. You'll get a handout that will tell you how to do this. But if you want to store a document, the same would work the same way in Excel. I do File, Save As, More Options, Tools, General. This may seem really complex, but having done this a few hundred times, it's really not very difficult. And what password do I want to open? So I'm going to establish a short password for this because I'm going to say this document isn't really that important, and I'm going to use something short. I do not want a separate password to modify. I only want a password to open, and then it will prompt me to re-enter that. And when I do that, the document is saved. So next time I go to open that document, I'm prompted for the password because now that document has been password protected, meaning it's been encrypted. So very simply, any document you have, you can do that same thing. You can also turn a Word document into an encrypted PDF. But I'm going to go to a different scenario that's really typical for all of us, and that is I'm going to open up a PDF that's not encrypted. And once I have this document, so let's say I scanned my tax return and I have that document. So I open up this document, which in this case is simply a document from Dell. It's not particularly important, and it's not encrypted. But I say to myself, this is all my passwords. This is my social security number, so I want to encrypt it. What I do is File, Export to, let me see if I'm doing this right. I should know my own instructions. I'm going to File. I think I better go to my instructions to get this information, and I'm going to do just that. Let's go to our handout. So I've forgotten how to do this encryption, so let's just take a look at the handout. Oh, maybe I closed the handout, sorry. Pardon me here, I won't waste too much of your time. Hopefully, I'm now going to open up my handout. And, oh my goodness. I'm taking a bit more time than I really should be taking here. I'm going to look and find my handout that I have stored. So now we have our instructions, and I want to encrypt an existing PDF file. So I'm going to go in this handout down to the instructions for encrypting a PDF file. So I'm going to open the PDF, then Tools, Protect, Encrypt. Okay, I forgot the process. So here's the process. Now I go to my PDF file that I want to encrypt. I'll open this PDF file, and I want to encrypt it. So I'm going to choose Tools, then Protect. So I scroll down under here to Protect, and I choose Protect using a password, and I give it a password, and then I retype the password. And it says that's a weak password, but I'm saying to myself, that's okay. This is not a particularly important document. I apply that, and now it says, wait a minute, Adobe requires at least 6 characters. Okay. So you really can't make a mistake doing this, unless you can't type and talk at the same time. And I've now encrypted that file, so if I try and open it in the future, it will prompt me for that password. So without belaboring that further, know that you will get that attachment, and you can download it, in fact, during this webinar if you wish, but it will be provided to everyone. It will be available on Foster Motley's website. So you know you can encrypt any Office document by saving it with a password. You can encrypt any PDF by saving it with a password. So hopefully that helps you make the decision about which documents you choose to encrypt. And we've just gone through a demonstration of how to do that. Okay, so we've talked about how to encrypt the document at rest that's stored. That will be fairly small in importance compared to this topic, which is how and why do we protect or encrypt the document during transmission. It's during transmission where we put whatever we send out in the clear for NSA or hackers. Anybody can read email traffic. Email is not encrypted. So what we have are 3 choices if we want to protect a document during transmission. 1, we can encrypt the email. So this requires, for any email, the purchase of an email encryption tool. In Microsoft Office, there's a tool called Azure Information Protection AIP. It's $2 a month. You can add it if you are an Office 365 user. For virtually anyone, there's a product called Virtru that a lot of people use, and it works for Gmail, and it's free. Remember what I said about free? I don't love free products because generally speaking, they take your information that you give them and they sell it. That's how they get by with selling free products. But anyway, it works, and it encrypts the email. You can download it, and then when you send an email, you choose an option to encrypt the email. So that's one way to do it. And when you choose that option, then the traffic is garbled before it leaves your keyboard, let's say, and it's encrypted all the way to the recipient. And so that's one way to encrypt the document. Another is to encrypt the attachment. So once I've done what we just did prior, you saw me save that Word document with a password. Now I can attach that Word document to an email that I send. Even if the email is in the clear, the document itself is not openable. So I can encrypt the email, or I can encrypt the attachment. So encrypting an attachment gives another piece of important clarification that's required here, and that is it's really a bad security idea to include the password in the same email with the document you're sending, because if you send an email that says the attached highly secure document is protected by password XYZ, well, that email that you're sending, because it's not encrypted, it's in the clear, anybody who intercepts it, and when I say NSA, all the traffic, I think everybody knows this, whether you like it or not, that's sent by email or text anywhere to and from any address, certainly in the country, probably in the world, it's being read and interpreted for keywords and things like password or PW. Those would be keywords that the bad guys would be sensitive to. So because NSA can do it, the technology is available, other people can do it as well, and they do. So I'm not saying anybody's looking for you or me, but simply the technology is available, and we open ourselves to a security hole. So if we're sending something with a password, I wouldn't use the word password near it, but the best way to do this, if I'm going to send an encrypted attachment to someone, I'm going to pass the password on to them in a different medium. I'll text it to them. So in my email, I might say, I'm sending the password in a text to you, or I'm leaving you a voicemail, or I'm sending you a separate email that's encrypted where I'll put the password in that other email, which is kind of self-defeating. Why send an encrypted attachment in one email and encrypt a separate email? But anyway, it's viable. The third way is that we use a secure file sharing site. And financial institutions, you should thank Foster & Motley for years. They have provided for secure file sharing. You can go to their website and use file share. And that's the way you should do it. Whenever you send a tax document to your Foster & Motley account manager, and they receive it, I'm sure they're thinking to themselves, oh no, they shouldn't have sent this by email. This was in the clear. Instead, go to the website, use file sharing, or they may give you different instructions. When you use a file sharing site like Foster & Motley's ShareFile, when you log into your account, you click on that option, and you start attaching documents, those are encrypted, they are protected, they're encrypted in transit, and then Foster & Motley encrypts them at rest when the document reaches them. So encrypt the email or the attachment, or use a secure file sharing site. Those are the ways you keep your documents secure in transit. Okay, moving on. Just a couple of notes here. I find so many of us, and I include knowledgeable people, technical people. This is not a smart person, not smart person, or a technology knowledgeable or not knowledgeable issue. This is a human nature issue. A couple of things about managing locations of files that just lack of knowledge cause people to do things where you can't find the document you stored. I don't know where I stored that document. I think it's on my desk. I'm not sure where it is. Well, so what are the defaults? With Microsoft Office, the default save as location is either in your users see documents folder, or it's defaulting to the cloud. More recent versions, if you use 365, it defaults to your OneDrive. If you're not sure what that is, then your IT support could help. PDSI could help you. Anyway, the file's being stored somewhere, and a recommendation is that when saving files, don't just push the save button, use save as. Why? Because save as shows you where it's storing the file. And you'll see if it's going to your documents folder or your OneDrive. So it's just a simple thing, but boy, it really helps. and it greatly increases the likelihood of controlling document location. And many times, if you're using an Office save as, you'll see, or if somebody sends you an attachment, it will start with the words copy of file name. That is a dangerous thing, because if you just save it that way, then you will have whatever, let's say the document was named test. You'll have test stored there, and then you'll have copy of test, and then you'll have copy of test, and all of a sudden you've got multiple versions and you're not sure which one's most current. So when you save something and it wants to say copy of, just get rid of the words copy of. Just a small recommendation. One idea to control where you're important, let's say you review your document, you make some decisions. Now you've decided that you're going to secure tax returns, you're going to secure copies of your balance sheet, QuickBooks exports, whatever you decide are important. Set up a subfolder underneath your documents folder and call it protected documents or tax information or something, so that you put important documents in there. And that way, instead of having hundreds of documents on your computer and you have to wonder again next year, which ones of those should I be protecting? You put the important documents in one folder or a set of subfolders. Just an idea to try and help remember and control the documents that we feel are important. Personal decision. Okay. Cloud storage. Increasingly, more and more of us use the cloud. I use the cloud for storage when you're using major vendors like Microsoft or Google or Apple, Amazon, Adobe. There are many vendors who are credible, safe, they follow good security practices. Virtually all of these now say that when you store documents there, they are protected in transit and they're protected at rest. So when you save as a document from Word or Excel and you're saving it to your OneDrive, that is encrypted in transit and at rest. So that's changed over the years. It didn't necessarily used to be true, but you can feel safe, generally speaking, that your documents stored there are as safe as they are on your own C drive locally. There are people who will debate that, and all I can say is it's not quite as safe to store it on a cloud as on your C drive, because you can't control the access. But what you are doing is you're trusting Microsoft or Google to control the access. Your level of trust is your own decision. Generally speaking, from a technology point of view, they should be safe. So do I need to encrypt files that I've stored in the cloud? And it's really a personal choice depending on the level of sensitivity of the data. So my decision, if it's a balance sheet that I don't want kids or anybody else looking at, I'll encrypt that. Tax return, is that in the same category? QuickBooks export, maybe that is in the same category. So I'm not suggesting you go through all your hundreds of files and encrypt them all. Just choose which ones that you want to put a level of protection on in case you're hacked. So we've talked about files stored. We've talked about files in transit. Now I'm going to talk about the very important topic of public Wi-Fi. So the important thing to know, public Wi-Fi is not secure. On public Wi-Fi, meaning you're in a Starbucks, you're at a Marriott, you're at an airline, you're on an airplane, you're in a hotel, that's public Wi-Fi. It's not your own personal Wi-Fi. Those sites are not secure. They are never secure. Because you're in a Marriott, you think, oh, certainly they're protecting me. No, anyone sitting in a public environment in a backpack can have a password cracker that they can actually watch what you're typing on your screen. You think, oh no, wait a minute, that's 007 world. No, it's not. It's easy to do, inexpensive to do. And I'm not saying people are sitting in Starbucks or on an airplane and watching what you type, but they can. So when on public Wi-Fi, the basic principles are don't visit sites that require a login unless your traffic is encrypted. So what encrypts your traffic? A VPN software encrypts your traffic. That's a virtual private network. A virtual private network sets up a secure tunnel between you, point to point between you, where you start, and the other party to whom you're connecting. So if you're connecting to your bank, you want a VPN protecting that channel. If you're on private Wi-Fi in your own home or your own business, fine. No one can watch that traffic, but on a public Wi-Fi, they can. So just know when you're using public Wi-Fi, don't log into sites that require a password unless you're using a VPN. So I use NordVPN, N-O-R-D. I'm not saying it's better than any other service. I pay, fairly small, $29 a year or something like that. And it allows me, when I am on public Wi-Fi, to click my Nord app. It secures whatever connection I'm going to make with a VPN connection, and then I can go anywhere, even if I'm on public Wi-Fi. Honestly, mostly I've stopped using public Wi-Fi. And the reason is, I'm going to come down to how do you stay safe on public Wi-Fi. The key thing here, or one key thing, is to understand cellular traffic is always encrypted. So you really have to ask yourself a question. If you have an unlimited data plan, or even if you have an inexpensive data plan, why in the world do you need to use Wi-Fi when you can just turn your Wi-Fi off and use cellular? And so if I'm going to go to my bank site, I might just turn Wi-Fi off instead of using a VPN. So use cellular when you're in a public place, and just don't log into their public Wi-Fi. So how do you know you're safe? A lot of people think, well, wait a minute, when I'm in Starbucks, I need to know the password. So it must make it safe, right? No, it doesn't. Other people in Starbucks have the same password. Password doesn't make it secure. The fact that it's non-public is what makes it secure. So there have been, if you're in a Starbucks and you see something called Google Starbucks, or this is old now, but before Mr. Trump was first elected, the Republican National Convention, it's approximated that 1,000 attendees were hacked because some bad guy had put up a public Wi-Fi called Trump Wi-Fi, and everybody thought, oh, that must be safe. And it wasn't, it was fake. So public Wi-Fi, just very simply, don't connect to a site that needs a password unless you're using a VPN or cellular. So pretty simple stuff, but important to understand. So summarizing what we've talked about today, for our own document security, decide which files we want to encrypt while at rest and know how to encrypt them, and know that we don't want to send in unencrypted, unprotected information that's sensitive by email. Know when and how to use the cloud securely, understand where your risks may be, and be careful on public Wi-Fi. So important concept, each of these, not necessarily rocket science, but hopefully everyone has learned something from that. So we're finished with content today. Summarizing the entire series, we've talked about protecting ourselves from the open internet. That means in our homes, we make sure that our Wi-Fi is protected, our Internet of Things are protected, meaning our dishwashers and refrigerators and things that connect to the internet. We're using unique passwords and keeping our firmware updated, going to the vendor's website, searching my model of what I have in my home, and searching for updates or firmware, and then choosing to download. That's how we protect our internet. We secure our desktop, laptops, Macs, and the files stored on those devices by making sure we have antivirus and malware protection on our devices, PCs and Macs, that we keep our security patches, our software patches up to date from Microsoft, Apple, Adobe, and so forth, and that we back up our files in some kind of automated process. That we learn email security principles. You may remember the 5 principles of secure email evaluation. How do we know that it's okay or not okay to click on an email? And always turn on multi-factor authentication, not just for email, but especially for email, because it's a very, very common attack vector. It's where the majority of the most available kind of hack that really becomes a problem for most of the general public comes from email mistakes. Manage our passwords well. Know that we may have exposed passwords out there, so do not reuse passwords regularly. And if you have in the past, change them. And the simplest way to do it, use a password manager. Then coming to today, beware of public Wi-Fi. Know that our devices are secure. PDSI offers inexpensive security monitoring for devices, which, again, if you haven't heard me say this, we're not trying to sell services in this series. We're trying to educate But if you'd like information, feel free to let us know. And we will not contact you unless you request information. And not often talked about, but training, which is exactly what you're doing in this series. You're receiving information about secure behavior. So help your family members learn the same thing, because you're as secure as your weakest links. Not making comments about your family members. So we're finished with information. I want to thank you for your attendance, not only today, but during the series. And there's contact information here on the screen. And once again, thank you sincerely to our partners at Foster and Motley, who envisioned the need for this information simply to keep clients safe, help each of you to be safe. So thank you for your attendance.